Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today I am super excited to be using some new products from the Hello Harvest release. This is actually my set. I illustrated this set. It is called Life's Sweet Moments. And then I did pick out some of their like stacks so that I wasn't sure how I was going to do my background. I ended up using the scallop rectangles. This right here, I knew I was going to use all of the images because I really wanted to show the versatility of this set. But I call this Lazy Girl Stamping. Everything is still on its acetate sheet, on the front sheet. I've removed the back sheet. And then I am going to use some adhesive to put that right on the front of the acetate sheet. I'm going to pick up the whole thing with my Misty Door. And then that way I can ink it up and I can stamp it down and I will get all of the images, all of the sentiments, and I, will be able to play around really easily with it. If you use temporary adhesive, it's pretty easy to just rub it right off with your finger. If you use permanent adhesive, you can still use that if that's all you have, but then you do need to use something like a Gooby Gone to get it off completely of the front of the acetate. So just something there if you wanted to stamp all of the images at one time. So the whole thought behind this was, first of all, I love a mug. Okay, I just do. I love a mug. So you got two different sized mugs. One that's a little bit taller and more slender. One that's a little bit wider and more like just shorter. And then we have the saucer that goes with it, the little muffin, or is it a cupcake? See, so the little whipped cream can either go on top of your coffee cup or it can go on top of your muffin and make it into a cupcake. Because you guys know, like, we're investing our hard-earned dollars into these things, and so I wanted to do as many things as possible. Let's talk about the coloring real quick. I didn't end up leaving this mug white. That is how I was coloring it originally. But I do think white will probably be a pretty popular color, like, for the mug. So I did want to show that. I wanted to leave it in here. So what I'm doing is, when we're coloring white, we are only adding the shadows. So I'm adding the shadows kind of to the left and the right-hand side of the cup, as well as to the bottom. And then in the back, I'm doing it as if I was coloring the back side of the rim. And then I will put the coffee in front of that. With the handle, we're going to have darker shading where it is on the inside edge. And then the lightest edge will be the outside, like the roundest part. For the coffee, again, because we're looking at it from a side view, we can see the full coffee mug. We're only seeing the coffee from a side view. So it is going to be a little bit darker on the edges. And so then this one, I chose to color olive. So one of the things that I think a lot of us struggle with sometimes when we feel like we're just making the same card over and over again is, I think a handful of us, we have a handful of color palettes that are like go-tos for us. And so heading into fall, if you feel like you're kind of stuck with, hey, I always do the same thing. I mean, for fall, jewel tones are always very popular. So one of the ways that I kind of like to look and see maybe what different ones I can use. I love Pinterest for that, like different color combinations. But then you can also kind of look and see what is trending in fashion or trending in home decor to see, what colors are being used together. So olive, like earthy greens are something that is really trending for fall and winter this year. And so that's how I chose this. Now, the paper pack, I think it's called Homestead Hues, also has like several different types of olives. So I knew that I could bring in that pattern paper with the olive and it would work really well. Let's go back to the card real quick. So here, I wasn't loving the way that my markers were blending in the center there. And if that happens to you, like if you feel like, well, they're just not blending as well as I would like, go over them again. As long as you've given them a little bit of time to dry back, you shouldn't be at risk for oversaturating the area. And sometimes, if you have colors that are kind of too far apart, it just needs another layer to go with it. And so once I brought in that second layer, it did work really well. For the saucer, I am making it darker in the center, and then darker underneath. So like it almost looks a little bit like, I don't want to say, I mean, I guess it could look like a bowl, but it is a saucer because it has like that bottom part that it stands on. So I want to keep the middle of my saucer darker and the outside edges of it lighter, because, you know, it typically does dip in, and that's where our coffee cup is going to sit. Either one, you could use either one with the saucer. I'm going to use the taller one. And then some of the other colors that kind of are trending are like rich earthy browns. So the Pantone color of the year was a brown, is like a mocha. It's kind of darker red violets, burgundies, berries, earthy greens, like I said before, deep purples, maroons, and then surprisingly, like a really light kind of primrose pink and gray, like a cooler gray, which just means that it is more on the blue side than it is on the red side. Here, I chose to do a gold accent on my cup at the bottom, and then that is also what I'm filling in the middles of my flowers with. So when I was drawing the flowers, because I do love a mug, and I will put I'll put anything in a mug, like anything in a scene card that I can put a mug in. The whipped cream. So I did choose to switch to warmer grays for my whipped cream. For my tea bag up there in the top left. And then also I'm going to use them on the muffin wrapper. And again, even though we've switched from cool grays to warm grays, we're just adding the shadows. So we want to make sure that we're leaving white areas in our white whipped cream. Right now it's going to look really dark. But once we get everything pulled together and there's other colors next to it, it will not look as dark. Just make sure you're leaving that white as your highlight color. And again, like I said before, you can use this as either the whipped cream for your coffee, or you can use it as the frosting for your muffin. For the tea bag, I'm going to use the same ones. You guys hear me talk about coffee all the time and how much I love it, but I also drink tea. I drink tea every morning, every morning. And sometimes if I'm feeling that coffee-ish at the end of the day, I do drink a honey vanilla chamomile, which is delicious. So I shaded the bag. You know, it has like those little folds and stuff at the top, so we do want to make sure we're adding shading there. And then I made it a little bit darker along the side. For the actual tea part, I used stippling and a couple of different browns. These are the same browns that I intend to use in the muffin. And so I just did a series of dots kind of down toward the bottom, which, you know, once the tea bag is used, that's kind of where everything gathers. And then I went over it with the lightest gray, which is a W1, for that way it would kind of blend them all together and make them look like they were behind that kind of like tissue material the tea bags are made out of. The flowers, that's what we were talking about before. So I really wanted to be able to use the flowers, and you can use the flowers with the mugs, or you could use the flowers by themselves. This time I'm going to put the flowers in the mug, and because again, I wanted to show, you know, how versatile it is. So you can have one card that is really much more feminine, and then one card that is much more masculine or gender neutral. So here is how I kind of went about drawing them. I wanted them to be able to be, it's your card, so you can color them however you want. So I wanted them to be more versatile. So when I originally drew these two ones that I'm coloring white, I drew them as poppies. That's how I was going about it. But once I got them drawn, I realized that they could also be colored like anemones. So here I'm coloring them as if like they were a white anemone with a purple center. But honestly, like it's a flower, and color it however you want to make your heart happy. Then the other ones that we're going to do purple, again, they're drawn to be cosmos, but they could also be prairie roses. Those are very similar styles of flowers. And then the two smaller ones are actually flax flowers, which are very small, but they could also very easily be like buttercups or, other types of those smaller flowers. Basically, I went looking for wildflowers and then kind of took my inspiration from there. Each one of the flower types has two. It has like a large open one and then either a side view or another position. I'm going to use all of them in my one bouquet today. But you could do like a whole bouquet of poppies, or you could do a whole bouquet of cosmos. You know what I'm saying? And so the colors that I picked were kind of based on what I knew would look well together, but also based on kind of what those trendy colors are. So like those deep purples that we talked about. But here's the thing, because this is one of the things that we like sometimes talk about is color theory. And so yellow green, which is kind of where those olives kind of fall, they're much more desaturated than the yellow greens I usually use, but its complementary color is a red violet, is a pink. And so since they're, calling for those kind of like berry colors, the maroons, I was like, okay, that'll be great. I'll do one of them pink. And then what other color is going to work really nicely with that? Well, pink, one of its analogous colors, which means it's just next to it on the color wheel, which typically means they'll look very nice together, is violet. So that is how I put them together. But also we do see those in those kind of trending colors. And so like when we talk about color theory, it's not just about card making. Like color theory applies in other areas of our life, decoration, getting furniture, fashion. Me personally, like none of those things really matter too much to me. As I sit here in my pajamas with my blue robe on doing my voiceover. But those are definitely other areas that we can look to find inspiration if we find ourselves kind of bogged down by our regular go-to colors. So as far as the coloring goes, all of the rules that I normally tell you guys, where one object meets another, we're going to have shadows, and where one object lays on top of the other, we're going to have shadows. But also, we've talked about before in other videos, like following those lines of the illustrator to help give your petals or your cupcake liner or muffin liner, your whipped cream, like to help give some shape. There are those shading lines there that will help guide you to where we want to add some shading. So here you can see, like as I'm doing these petals, I've extended that dark out along those lines that are drawn there to help just give them a little bit more shape and a little bit more personality. If you're not there yet, don't worry. Practice putting in your shadows where the petals meet the base and where one petal lays on top of the other one. And then this other stuff where we kind of follow the illustrative lines can come later. So here I definitely chose some more cooler browns for my muffin because I wanted it to look like it was chocolate. Like who wouldn't want a chocolate muffin, right? So when you bake something with like a white cupcake liner, usually it stays whitish more towards the top, but down at the bottom, or I mean really any color, down at the bottom you can see the color of the item, the muffin or the cupcake. So I'm going in with my browns, and with the liner there's peaks and there's valleys. So I'm going in and I am adding the darkest color to the valleys, and I am leaving the lightest color for the peaks. So how you can see, how it's drawn, where one should be raised and the other would be like sinking in. So then after I get my my browns done, I'm going to switch to those warm grays up at the top, and I'm going to let them blend in together. And then I'm going to move on to using those same browns to color the top. I felt like I got a little bit heavy-handed with my grays and my cupcake liner. And that happens, sometimes when we're coloring something new, or we're coloring something where we may not be as confident. We can maybe sometimes be a little bit heavy-handed with the markers. And then also, like, Olo is a free flow marker, which is great because it means we get to use every last drop of the marker, but there sometimes is a little bit of a learning curve because there may be more ink coming out than you're used to. So if you find that you have been a little bit heavy-handed, like, don't freak out. You can lessen that with either the colorless blender, help lighten the color. Here, in order to create a little bit of texture on top of the muffin, I'm doing those same dots, that same stippling that we did for the tea. I'm just doing it with the darkest color and then the mid-tone all over the top of our little muffin, to help it look like it has a little bit of, what do you call that when we cut a piece of bread and you look at crumb, like it has a little bit of a crumb to it. And then I'm coloring in the top portion lighter. So here, in order to lighten this up a little bit, I'm going in with the W0, and I'm just going over the areas that I want to lighten. So you can use the colorless blender, or you can use a lighter color of the same family that you're already coloring in. Now, remember when we go in with our markers that it's always darker than it's going to be when we first start because the moisture from the alcohol hasn't evaporated yet. So if you're not sure, leave it, color something else, and then come back to it. Okay, so all of the flowers have one leaf that goes with it. So there's 2 flowers from each family and then 1 leaf. So I chose to color the leaf that goes with the what is that? The poppies, I think. Yeah, I think it is the poppies. The olive color, and then the leaf that goes with the cosmos, I did more of like a teal, and the leaf that goes with the flax, I did a combination of the 2. So I started, like, my darkest colors are the same as the olive color, which was a G, what was it? Why can't I remember? I'll link them below. But I know the YG was an 8.5 and I think an 8.7. So then I switched out the lightest color to be a little bit more green. It was a G 1.8. See, I just had to look. So then I'm going to get all of the dyes out, and I'm going to die cut everything. I did cut an extra whipped cream and some extra leaves as well. And then here is where I'm kind of starting to figure out how I'm going to build my cards. So this one I left in because you could see the whipped cream here on the cup, or it covers up all of the topping and then becomes a cupcake, which I liked it actually on the cup more because it gave it a little bit more height. And then here's where I've pulled out that pattern paper from the Homestead Hues pack, and I'm kind of building out my flowers to see what I like. When I did this, I was like, I have to change the color of this mug because I have those white flowers. So I needed the color of the mug to be something different. So I decided that I was going to use that scallop rectangle as like my base. I would have the olive on the edges, and then I would do the cup olive. So the same as the one before. Something else to note about this particular cup. So this smaller one, the middle cuts out, like the coffee portion cuts out. You can see it kind of to the right hand side of my mat. And so you can either adhere it with the, when you put it down on your card, put the coffee back in it, or you can leave this open so that you have some stems and things for the flowers that they can actually tuck inside the mug. So either which way. Here, again, I ran into the same problem with the blending, and so here I am doing the same thing I did before, going back in and then doing it 2 times. And then that did give me a much happier blend for what I was going for. So now we're going to start building things together. One of the really great things about the paper packs from Honeybee is that they are sized to give you 2 full card fronts. So they are 6 by 8.5. So I trimmed it down to 5.5, and then I cut it down the middle at 4.25. And now I have 2 card fronts. I am going to use both of them. One with this little scallop that has like the stitched detail on the edge, and then the other one I'm going to use just to add some interest, because that little card's not going to have a whole lot going on. For the sentiment, I originally, stamped them in white and black. I am going to use that one for my more gender neutral card, but for the other one, it was just kind of like sticking out like a sore thumb. So I decided that I was going to stamp it on, this is like a brighter olive green, and so I wasn't 100% sure if I would like it. I actually did end up darkening it up. I did end up darkening it up. So I treated with my anti-static tool and then heat set it with some white detail embossing powder. Once that was cooled off, I went in with some forest moss and colored the paper to be a little bit darker. And then I went in with just a slightly damp cloth and buffed it off the top so that the Hello Friend part was still very legible. But don't worry, that black and white one isn't going to go to waste. I actually stacked them on top of each other. So now bringing our cards together, I love a clean and simple card. Like that is how I started in card making, is this clean and simple card. So things like this, where it's like the coloring can stand on its own, are kind of some of my favorite cards. So because I know that I need the sentiment at the bottom, I want it to be high enough up that everything is going to make sense. So I'm putting that down first. It says life's sweet moments are better with you, and I love that. And you could add extra dimension by kind of popping these up with foam tape and stuff, but I almost always just leave them flat. I don't know. There's just something to me about a clean and simple card that like just lays flat. I try very hard to incorporate the dies because I know like not everybody loves the fussy cutting and the masking and stuff, but you could very easily do this card with the masking. Just remember, with the masking, you always want to stamp the thing you want to see all of first. So in this case, we see all of the tea bag, and then the next thing we would stamp would be the muffin after we mask the tea bag, and then we would stamp the cup. We would mask that, stamp the saucer, and then the whipped cream. So here you guys, I mean, I feel like I say the same thing all the time, and I apologize. I don't like the white outline. I don't. So I blend them in. Because I colored all of these, with the markers, I have every single color that I need to blend these into each other. So I just start assembling it. So the cup onto the saucer, blend that in, the whipped cream onto the top of the cup, which I did like. I am a tea drinker, but I don't drink whipped cream. I don't really drink whipped cream ever, but like I wouldn't put it on my tea necessarily. And then I was like, oh man, like I did the little tea bag. Can you put whipped cream on tea? And it turns out there's a lot of dessert teas that it's totally appropriate to put whipped cream on. So I say you do whatever makes your heart happy. So I just like to go through and kind of blend in each one because when I'm not doing the masking and I am using the dies, I still want them to look cohesive and like they belong together. Before I do the tea bag, I am going to go in and give these a little bit of shadow. We're not doing a full scene or anything like that, but adding these little bit of shadows underneath our items helps to ground them and bring everything together so they don't look like they're just floating in space. And if you don't like the tea bag, you could absolutely leave it off. Like then you would have your 3 elements that create your visual triangle with your sentiment, your muffin, and your cup. But the tea bag is no different. I am going to bring all, like I'm going to blend that right in as well, and then add the shadow underneath that. I realize that you can't see the string for the tea bag. Do not fret. I'm going to come in and get it with my white gel pen. So we will be able to see it in the end. So then after that one was done, I had all of my my little bouquet here together. I picked up the largest flower, which is that large white one, put some glue on it, and then smushed it down to try to get as many pieces as I can before I have to pick it up. So this one kind of slid out. I'm going to put some adhesive behind it, and I tried to slide it back in, but clearly that didn't work. But most of them did hold for the most part, and then I was able to, the ones that didn't, kind of work around that. Again, everything here is flat. So I did this cute little scallop rectangle. And if you are like, I don't like that full expanse of white, you could even cut this into a frame. Like you could cut the rectangle out on the inside. So I've glued down my bouquet at this point, and now I'm going to put my sentiments. The kind of the bottom left-hand side was the side that was the most open based on our floral bouquet. So that is where I chose to put the sentiment. I think I used the Homestead Hues gems. Oh, here originally I went in with the warm grays to do the shadow, and I actually didn't like it as well. So I'm just going to go over it with the cool grays. So it won't be as cool as the other card. It'll be more of like a neutral gray, but that's fine too. Adding our shimmer to all of our flowers and our mugs, because I love the shimmers and I can't stop myself. And then I am going to do some white gel pen highlights, especially into the centers of the flowers where the stamen is, on the handles and the side of the mugs. I think I also added some to the whipped cream and like the crumble part of the muffin. And then, like I said, I did use it for that line on the, like the string on the tea bag. This is the gems that I used so like they all catch the light different ways. And so I picked the ones that I picked. And then in the photos, I had to laugh because in the photos, the ones that I picked that look like a pink, when they catch the light a certain way, they actually look like orangish. So in the photos, it doesn't look like it matches at all. But here, you can see here that it does. All right, so I hope that you guys will check this set out as well as the rest of the release from Honeybee. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope this inspires you to try to find some new color palettes and some more versatile stamps. And I will catch you on the next video. Bye.